I've done plenty of interviews where people said they were going to sit down and ask the tough questions. Those were definitely technically hard questions. So sure.
All right, we are here with Shimano at the Shimano EP6 and the EP801 launch, and also they got the new Link Glide XT Di2 gear system. And I'm having a chat with
Nick Murdick. I'm the mountain bike product manager for Shimano America.
Great, thanks. So we've been riding the motor and the gear system a bit, and I've got lots of questions. First, a more general question. When designing a motor, what's the process? You start with you envision what you want the motor to be, and then you start designing it. But after doing the design process, you have to have the motor certified.
For sure, there's a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess those there are two different processes. One for Europe, one for the US, I guess, or is it the same?
There's, I think the electromagnetic certification standards are basically the same.
Yeah.
But basically, traditionally, if it passes Europe, it'll pass in America. There are other countries around the world where there are totally different rules. So there are different settings for Brazil, Korea, South Africa, Japan.
Yeah. To get the motor certified, what is required? Do you have to do a power test?
It's the bike that gets certified, so we do our best to make sure that we're making parts that can go on a bike that can get certified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not a specific motor certification.
Right.
Yeah. So it gets certified the same way the stem and the crank and wheels and whatever.
Yeah, there can be a lot of standards that apply to it. So there are still pedals, cranks on the bike. Those things need to be certified as well. But e-bike specific things. I mean, in Europe we're mostly talking about EN 15194, and it's covers a lot of stuff about the complete bike, not just.
So there is no instructions like for cars, for instance, when you have to run it through the WLTP test, and there are no such standards and requirements for cars. Or in the US, it's the EP8 test.
It varies so much country to country that a lot of the standards will say that it has to be able to pass an electromagnetic certification test and not exceed a certain amount of noise. That's usually the one that we're kind of the most concerned with and paying the most attention to when certifying a bike.
Yeah, and you got this continuous S1 norm, is that correct? That states the power should not exceed 250 watts at thermal equilibrium.
Sure, yeah. This is maybe more of a question for an engineer or QC person. Shimano officially would have no comment because we don't like to share our interpretation of legal regulations. We will make a statement to our customers that we feel confident that we are complying with the regulations, and that's as far as we're willing to take it.
Yeah. It's okay if you don't want to answer, but I always wondered what is thermal equilibrium? Can you say, okay, my motor is designed to handle 250 degrees? And,
I can't say too much. Yeah, I can say that I'm a curious person like you. I've wondered as well, and the answer has not been easy for me to find.
No.
I'm not an expert on that part of it, though. Yeah.
So there's no limit in the law to...
Not that I personally have seen from a little bit of looking, but yeah, I'm not an expert or lawyer, legal person, or a representative of Shimano on the point, right?
So you could go as hot as you want as long as the insulation and the metal expansion doesn't ruin the motor, the cable installation.
Maybe, yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah.
I've really always wondered about that, because the peak power output and the continuous rated power output, it's not the same number. That much is clear. Yeah.
I think there was a last question there. The torque, for some reason, I guess it's due to the pedelec rules, that you state Newton meters instead of watts. Everyone has been doing that since day one, and I've always thought they do that not to confuse people. Why is this a 400 watts motor when the rule is 250 watts? So I guess, is that why you use Newton meters, do you know?
It kind of, to me, it feels like it became a bike industry kind of marketing trick very early on, that you could keep increasing the torque number. It's not really doing anything to increase the capability of the bike. This is an oversimplification. It'll drive like real engineers nuts, but basically you could say that torque times cadence is watts. That's not right, I know that, but it's reasonably close. You have to move the decimal point. Basically if you're, let me back up a little bit. The E8000 drive unit, it had 70 Newton meters because we felt like that was a good number. If you get above that, then you're going to fairly easily reach a point where your peak torque is going to be falling off because the drive unit just plain can't produce any more watts. As the industry has kind of pushed those torque numbers up, it is, not a bad idea to understand that you're only getting that at really low cadence numbers, and the higher the torque number is, unless the watt number is also going up, then it just is lower. Yeah, it's lowering the point where you're going to start feeling a drop off in torque at some point.
Yeah, because motor rotation.
Exactly.
All right. Is there a standard for determining? I take it's not the manufacturers. They will come up with a number that they feel suits the motor compared to the previous model and perhaps compared to the competition? Or is there...
For coming up with a peak torque number? Or? We set a target, and then we pick an electric motor that goes inside the drive unit that can hit it fairly easily. We're programming the thing to stop at 85 Newton meters. Theoretically, if it was unrestricted, it could put out more torque than that.
So it's no standard for measuring, is it stall torque, for instance, or is it measured at the speed? Can you decide what cadence you want to measure that number, or because it's not flat 85 Newton meters from 0 to 120?
Right, yeah. I don't know what we've chosen as our internal target for establishing what 85 Newton meters is. That level of detail is still, the guys in Japan keep some secrets from me too,
So it's not stall torque, at least. It's not 0 cadence torque.
It doesn't seem like something we would do, no.
Great. All right, next one. About the new motors, the EP801. I'm sure you had a few goals for that motor coming. So what did you set out to update from the EP800?
For the most part, it was compatibility with XT Di2. That was kind of first and foremost.
And when we're talking about the motor, also the BMS Gen 2. So it would be cool if you could
for sure
keep those separate, so I know which one is which. The Shimano XT Di2, is that the BMS or the motor that facilitates?
Maybe the layout of the components inside the drive unit, and there's some firmware and maybe some expanded memory to be able to handle the additional firmware as well. So the auto shift algorithm lives on the drive unit, and then it's physically got the ability to rotate the chainring while the pedals are not moving. So that was basically the start of EP801, was, okay, we're going to make a new drive unit that's got this capability. while we're at it, what else would we like to do?
Yeah.
And so that's where the second generation battery management system comes in, that we could see growing frustration with the way that the power was routed through our system that required a separate battery for any remote power switch. And of course, that tiny little battery, if it dies, makes it very difficult to turn on the bike. So with EP801 and EP6, the new battery management system opportunity allowed us to eliminate that problem.
There has been some talk about the data transfer rate that was increased from the E8000 to the EP8. I'm not sure it's correct, but it seems it is.
It is, yeah. The new E2 cables have a higher data transfer rate, and everything has got bigger chips, more memory inside of it as well.
Yeah, so it's been further increased from the EP800 to the EP801. Or
oh, yeah, probably. So I guess I don't know.
no.
I am assuming, and like anybody could, that if there's an auto shift algorithm living on there, there's got to be space for it now.
Yeah. It was, the rumor also said the increased data transfer improves control of the motor. You got more sensors, more sensor data. You can adjust the motor output much quicker. Was that a thing with the new?
None of that information goes through the E2 cables, so it would be just faster chips inside the drive unit compared to
the
E8000.
hardware. Yeah. All right. And for the EP6, is that basically the EP8 with an alloy casing and the added Di2 functionality?
Yep.
And the Gen 2 BMS. Yeah.
It's a little bit nicer motor inside there, so your like sweet spot of cadence is a little bit wider on the EP801 drive unit compared to EP6.
Yeah.
So maybe some people can feel a difference, but essentially, yeah, the casing is the difference.
Yeah, I remember reading that in the media, on the website. I think that it had improved high cadence power, but that's only the 801. The EP6 is the same as the old EP800.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and when the EP800 was released, there was of course the motor rattle that became an issue, and that was one of the things you set out to improve on both the EP801 and the 6.
Yeah, for sure. If there's going to be a new one and we have an opportunity to kind of play with the layout inside, then we're looking to make it as good as we can. It's the kind of thing that we would try to improve by running change as well. So if there's anything we can do to the seals or the clutches inside, then for sure we'll do it whenever we can come up with an improvement. But this was kind of an opportunity as the layout was changing. So it's a bit quieter, but we want to be careful to not overstate that it's not as quiet as E8000 was. It also has less drag than E8000 did, and there's a direct relationship between those two. Right?
Yeah, after riding both motors here at this camp, I can't really remember ever hearing the rattle. But having tested some other bikes, I thought perhaps I heard something, so that could be something that can develop. So even though it's completely silent now it can be, there can be some rattle in a year, for instance.
Yeah, it's my experience is that the rattle now is a little bit less disruptive, but I can still hear it for sure. It's definitely still there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And you mentioned this seal. Have you tested, do you know if the motor rattle will increase as the seal wears?
We don't have good data on that yet. No. Obviously, we're doing long-term stress testing on the machines, running it through lots and lots of cycles, but it's not anything that's given us like a good perspective on how the rattle will change over time. So that's one of the reasons that we want to be really cautious is that, it could change over time. And just to be, perfectly honest, if it gets worse over time, then it wouldn't be surprising. It's not 100% related to the seal, though. So,
if the noise were to increase, that means the seal has been worn down a bit. Is the seal serviceable part?
It is not.
Okay, no. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, it seems it's a seal just sitting outside that can be removed, and you apply a bit of grease and you put a new one in. But yeah, that's not how it's intended to be.
Correct. Yeah, and my career before becoming a product manager was as a bike mechanic for a long time. Like, I like to work on things.
Yeah.
It's definitely my perspective. I'd like it to be a bit more serviceable, but kind of by policy, it's a sealed complete unit. So I will fight to keep changing that, or keep fighting to change that. But we'll see how successful I'll be.
Does Shimano have an official statement of the longevity, the life, how long the motor is supposed to live?
No, there's no official statement, just what the warranty coverage period is.
Yeah, so that's everything from 2 to, or perhaps even 1 to 5 years?
It would be 2 years on the drive unit.
In Norway, it's 5, and I guess a few other countries.
Right, yeah,
it's
giving
national.
the American policy. Okay.
But the EU is 2 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and UK, as far as I know. But Norway is 5, and I assume there are a few more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then I can conclude it's designed to work for 5 years or 2.
That seems perfectly reasonable. I mean, what we try to do is make it last long enough to last the useful life of the bike, right?
Yeah.
But like, assuming your suspension's all going to need to be replaced at the same time, that kind of lifespan, right?
Yeah, I see. Is it possible, really, designing a sealed unit with those bearings to work for 5 years? I mean, the motor is heating up it's not much air inside the motor, as far as I know. The motor is manufactured in some sort of vacuum, some degree of vacuum.
I don't know. I guess I haven't. I don't think so. I think it's a clean room, but I don't think it's a vacuum.
No, okay, no. But anyway, as the air inside expands, air is pushed out. As it cools down, air is pulled in, and that air, of course, is humid.
Right.
Yeah. So this sealed design, it's not 100% sealed. It will draw in air as the bearings wear and as the seals wear.
That's my impression, but to be honest, I don't know.
No, because we are always. We think it's cool when you get a serviceable motor and you can swap the parts, but basically none of the big manufacturers supply much internal parts for their motors.
And again, I don't want to speak to regulations because interpretation of them can be tricky. But there may be something about anti-tampering in the regulations that prevents it even. So I'm not sure that we have a choice. But again, we don't even have legal conversations like that within the product development team. If it's a legal issue, we just don't discuss it. No. Just say, this is the policy. And
That's
then I'll
premise.
keep asking and asking and asking, and they'll just say, nope.
No. That's the premise.
Yeah.
There are different, not ideologies, but how do you say it? Schools, perhaps. Bosch, they enjoy their motor overrun. Specialized too. Yamaha has quick power decay, and so does Shimano. And riding wet, rough trails, almost trails riding. You're standing still, you're trying to make a turn, need a bit of motor power, going uphill, you want to avoid the big rock. The motor, the Shimano motor, starting with the EP8, it engages very carefully, and if you just want to tap the pedals ever so slightly, it will cut the power immediately. Other motors will enter some sort of ramp-up sequence. where, okay, we are going to spin up to whatever RPM, and then we are going into normal pedaling mode, it seems to me. So Specialized and Bosch, they've had this ramp-up sequence. Shimano never had. What made you decide to go that route?
That's a good question, and I feel like I was reading an article or hearing a podcast or something just within the last week or so where somebody said everybody says their drive unit has a natural ride feel, but no one has ever defined that, and I think that that is exactly what's going on here. That's one of those kind of defining characteristics that if it's going to feel like you riding a mountain bike, then the drive unit always just needs to be there supporting you. So that kind of gentle application of power that's just matching what you're matching, and the algorithm choosing an assist ratio based on how hard you're pushing on the pedals, it really helps to deliver that natural ride feel. When you have things like that, basically what you're describing very specifically is a powered riding experience, right? The motor is doing more of its share of the work to make the bike more technically capable, and that just was not our philosophy, right? We wanted it to ride like a mountain bike. And so sure, yeah, you could clear a rock section a little bit easier. I'm certainly open to the idea of increased customization in the future if that really is what somebody wants, but the kind of core identity of the EP drive units is this natural, excuse me, is this natural ride feel that kind of feels as much like a regular mountain bike and you just being incredibly fit as possible.
Yeah, as you say, many people talk about natural feeling motors, but what is that? Yeah, I never found out, but I agree. Motors such as the Shimano and also the Yamaha that only amplify when you put in power. They never enter any sequence where they're programmed to keep pushing.
Right.
So, what we used to call motor, we usually call it motor overrun, but you had a different name for it.
We don't have a public-facing term, like that's fine. I think I mostly call it assist carryover.
Yeah.
And we do have some of it, and it does help to smooth out your pedal stroke too. So there's like an application for just making the bike feel more like a natural ride feel, right? Like if you have none, then it can feel kind of pulsing because you're not spinning perfect circles. And then in boost mode, it does carry on a little bit longer after you stop pedaling than it does in trail mode. If somebody's surprised to hear that, maybe they're backpedaling a little bit when they're getting through those rock gardens. And in our system, we figure if you're backpedaling, you don't want it anymore, so we shut it off.
Yeah. Is there a difference in the new app? The new system. You got the basic mode and the assist mode for choosing what's it called again? Motor assistance level.
Sure.
So in the advanced mode, you get up to 15 different levels, and you pick the ones you want. Mm-hmm. I think I heard you mention level 15 has a different characteristics to the others.
To be completely honest, I don't remember what the final decision was.
No.
I believe that if you go to fine-tune mode, they all have the same amount of assist carryover.
Okay.
It's possible that we did something different for whatever the highest level is, but I don't believe so.
Okay. So in that respect, both the basic mode and the advanced mode, the assistance modes, they behave the same.
No, my understanding is that in basic mode where you have Eco, Trail, and Boost, that Boost has the long assist carryover, and Eco and Trail are standard, and in fine-tune mode, they're all standard.
Okay, so
like
only Boost.
Eco, Trail. Yeah,
get it. Was that it? Yeah, that's all the questions I had for this time.
All right, great.
Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Yeah.
That's it. Appreciate any likes and subscribes. Thanks for watching.